All right, let's talk about something that can make even the most seasoned teacher a little nervous. Copyright. We're going to break it all down so you can walk into your classroom feeling totally confident about the materials you're using.
Okay, picture this. It's the end of the week, you have the perfect movie to drive home your lesson, but then that little voice in your head whispers, wait, am I actually allowed to show this? We've all been there. It's that classic moment of uncertainty, and that's exactly what we're here to clear up.
So, let's get right to the punchline. The good news is, yes, as an educator, you get special considerations. There's this thing called fair use that's basically your best friend. And this is a big but, it's not a free-for-all, it's not a get-out-of-jail-free card. Knowing how it works is absolutely key. So, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll hit the essential takeaway. Then we'll cover what copyright actually is, get into your guide to fair use, see how it works in the classroom, and finally, make sure you're feeling confident about all of it.
Okay, first things first, let's jump right into the most important thing you need to know.
You know, that little bit of fear, the worry about getting in trouble for using something, it can really hold you back, right? It can make you second-guess a great lesson idea. And that fear, it really just comes from not being sure. So our whole goal here is to swap that uncertainty for some real clarity. Because once you understand your rights, wow, it's a total game changer.
So to really get confident with this stuff, we've got to start with the basics. Before we can talk about fair use, we need to know what we're, using fairly. So let's ask the big question. What even is copyright?
Basically, it's a legal shield for creators. If you make something original, a book, a song, a photo, you name it, the law says you, and only you, have the right to control how it's copied, shared, and sold. It's automatic.
And you'd be surprised how much this covers in your day-to-day life. We're talking about books, poems, articles, the stuff you hand out, music and lyrics, plays, photos and drawings, yep, even movies, videos, and computer software. Pretty much all the creative stuff you use in your lessons is protected. Okay, so if everything is protected, how on earth are we supposed to teach? Well, thankfully, the law has a built-in answer for that. It's called fair use, and for teachers, this is probably the most important tool in your copyright toolbox.
So what is it? Fair use is a part of the copyright law that says, hey, for certain things like teaching, research, or criticism, you can use a limited amount of copyrighted material without having to ask for permission. And teaching is like a textbook example of what this was made for. It was literally designed with people like you in mind.
But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Fair use isn't a checklist where you can say, oh, I use less than 30 seconds, so I'm good. It doesn't work like that. The best way to think about it is like a balancing scale. On one side, you have the rights of the person who made the thing. On the other side, you have the public's need to use it for things like, education. And your decision has to balance these two sides.
So how do you know which way the scale will tip? You weigh 4 key things. First, what's your purpose? Using it for a nonprofit, educational reason? That's a huge point in your favor. Second, what's the nature of the work? Is it super creative, like a blockbuster movie, or more factual, like a news report? Factual is usually safer. Third, the amount. Are you using just a little snippet or the whole thing? A small portion is always better. And finally, number 4, the effect on the market. Is what you're doing going to stop the creator from making money off their work? You have to look at all 4 of these together to make the call.
All right, that's enough of the legal theory. Let's get practical. How does this whole balancing act actually play out in real life, in your classroom?
Let's take a classic example, the photocopier. On the safer side of things, imagine you copy one chapter for your class to analyze this semester. See, your purpose is educational, the amount is small, and you're not really stopping the author from selling their book. The scale tips toward fair use. Now, the riskier version, you copy half the book to make a course pack so your students can skip buying it. Well, now the amount is huge, and you're directly hurting the market. See how the scale tips right back the other way?
And this same logic applies to all sorts of things. Thinking about showing a movie? It's much safer if it's a core part of your lesson, not just a Friday afternoon reward. What about using images you find online? Oof, that can be risky. Your best bet is to look for stuff that's in the public domain or has a Creative Commons license. That's your green light. And what about your students? Can they use a hit song in a presentation? Yeah, usually. For a project that's just for the class and not being sold, that's generally okay.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. The question now is, how do you wrap this all up into something you can actually use? Something that makes you feel confident? Well, it really just comes down to a few key habits.
Think of this as your mental checklist.
First, always have a clear educational reason for what you're doing. Second, only use what's truly necessary for the lesson. Remember the amount factor. Third, this is a great tip. If you can, just link to something online instead of making a copy. It's so much safer. Fourth, give credit where credit is due. Always attribute the creator. And last but not least, and this might be the most important tip of all, when you're not sure, just ask your school librarian. Seriously, they are your superheroes in this department.
So I want to leave you with this question to think about. Armed with this knowledge, the 4 factors, that little mental checklist, how is this going to change how you plan your next lesson? Think about it. What amazing resource have you been hesitant to use that you can now bring into your classroom with confidence? Because understanding this stuff isn't just about staying out of trouble, it's about unlocking new ways to make your teaching even more incredible.